Well, there are certain questions that I've been receiving from multiple corners about the process of ideation and brainstorming, the process in connection with idea networking, and further stages also. But at this point in time, I think it is very important to discuss about the ideation process, the brainstorming process, and also the idea networking process. We would actually like to discuss about the general process, and then in each application-based real-time use case scenario, we can discuss about the specifics and certain adaptations that we would make actually from the standpoint of a design and implementation of the ideation process, and also brainstorming and idea networking process. It is also important to understand that ideation management is a totally different task, and ideation in itself is a different task. When you manage the process of ideation, that is a different process. So when we talk about the ideation, we are talking about a particular subject matter. Let's say there is a team of people who are sitting together and they decide to do collaborative ideation or solo ideation when there is a single individual. And this ideation, you have to understand the final objective or the final goal could be either filing a patent application and not developing the product in the context, in a given context where you are actually trying to play as a patent troll, which is not a good idea, by the way. But in absence of proper funding or the financial health of the company is not good, then it may be considered as an option, and it should not be intentional actually. So that is my recommendation. The other part is, what is the final goal? It could be a combination of both. It is patenting and followed by productizing, and in some cases it may just be productization. So basically, based on the objective, the final objective, you have to actually design and implement the ideation process. And if you know that the final objective is patenting and prototyping, and productizing, which is basically the best case. If I consider that as the best case, where you are going to file for the patent application, you want to develop the patent application, you also want to develop the prototype, and you also want to develop the product, and finally, launch it in the market for say followed by branding, marketing, and sales. So when it comes to final product, it is important to understand that when product is actually or solution is ready to go to market and you want to launch in the market, there are certain considerations that become very important. You have to do a technology to market analysis and vice versa to understand the technology landscape, the patent landscape, and also the market landscape. You have to know who are the players in the market, what are their product, services, and solutions, in which geographic jurisdictions they are playing, what are they, are they how long have they been catering to that particular market. These are very important factors that need to be considered, and accordingly you have to start right from the beginning. So understand that when I'm talking the final objective or goal, I'm actually trying to backtrack, and I'm actually trying to design and implement the ideation process in such a way that it actually is very directed towards the final goal. If the final goal, as I mentioned earlier, is patenting, prototyping, and productizing, in this particular best case scenario, it is important to understand that market comes into play, technology comes into play, and also finance comes into play. So the multiple multiple factors come into play when productization is concerned, or you are trying to productize and also do the prototyping. Because as far as prototyping is concerned, the buyer would be if it is a conceptual prototype, the buyer is actually can be the first buyer, can be examiner at the patent office, or in a close-knit debate, it could be a focus discussion group, and then you subject this prototype for analysis and vetting by multiple stakeholders, and they can be respondents and they can give their own ideas, and they could be people from the user group, and they can actually vet and provide their ideas about the prototype. And if it is basically a non-conceptual or a physical prototype, a minimum viable product, then it has to be actually presented before the target audience. It could be a potential investor, it could be people who are potential users, and potential people who are makers also can also be a part. But those makers may not be your competitors. They can be makers of different products and solutions. They can also be a part of the vetting group. Also, you can involve people who are basically from different walks of life, for a general analysis or understanding of the physical prototype. And then so with all these factors, when taken into consideration, you understand that you will be starting with a lean ideation process. And also it is important to understand that when it is lean, it has also to be guided by market information. It has to be guided by technology information. It is to be guided by patent information. So when you are following a guided approach, the likelihood of failure is very, very low. The likelihood of failure, or I would also say the likelihood that you are going to waste the money of the investor, or you are going to waste the capital investment, the time and manpower investment that has been made into it, is actually very, very low. It is reduced as much as possible, because you know that what is my market, who are the potential buyers, you also know who are the the potential investors, who are the people who are going to spread the word of mouth in the market, who are those who are going to refer my product, solutions or services to buyers, potential buyers. So when all this analysis is done, the likelihood of failure is low. Now, to start with ideation, it is very important to understand that what are the requirements, what are the expectations, the demands, what are the requests that can be taken into consideration from the standpoint of determination of requirements, requests, demands, expectations of target audience. And as I mentioned earlier, the target audience set is too large. You can pick from the standpoint of sampling, you can pick one or two entities from each of these subsets and put them together into a sample set and then start the analysis. So you then zero down to something called requirements determination. We will call that ideation requirements determination. Once it is done, it is very important to understand that the ideation architect or the idea architect can be a group of people in collaborative ideation or a solo ideation process. Then it can be an individual. You need to actually go ahead and specify those requirements that have been determined. Once those specifications are done, you have to also understand that during this discussion or in the context of the current discussion, I am only talking about a generic process. I am not talking about specifics, because I can also pick up application-based real-time use case scenarios and actually typecast them into each of these phases to explain in detail how, for example, in a certain case the ideation can be done. So if at all you take a product, for example, a charger for an electric vehicle, you have to understand that what all entities are basically participating as live and non-live entities which are there in a given context of smart charging. And then we have to understand that what are the possible gaps or loopholes or white spaces in connection with each of those components, and what is the state of the art today. Is there a likelihood of design and implementation of new and enhanced systems? Is there a possibility of design around? So there are multiple things, and it's too it would be too exhaustive for me to actually bring them all here in place, because it make the entire discussion very complex. So going to the next stage is actually feasibility analysis. I think I have mentioned earlier in my certain videos, you can refer to my channel called Disruptive Incubation-As-A-Service, where I have talked about operational feasibility analysis, technical feasibility analysis, legal or patent feasibility analysis, including patentability analysis. I also talked about market feasibility analysis or sales feasibility analysis. There can be n number of feasibility analysis, that economic feasibility analysis that you can do from the standpoint of understanding the feasibility of the product or solution or the patent application that you are trying to develop and file. And in that case, it is guided completely by market information, technology information, and also the patent information or the state of the art that exists as prior art in the public domain that you can access and guide your process. The next one is, the logical system design, and also in parallel you have budget and scheduling. You can, allocate budget, you can manage the budget, you can actually do the scheduling in terms of how much time has to be spent on each of these phases. The logical design is actually a conceptual design or a logical design. It could be even a physical prototype design at that stage. That is followed by, subjecting the design to testing, and that testing can be done either in as a kind of a cold testing or dry testing. You can dry run or cold run, and then you can also have people to give their ideas. That could be a testing where it is being subjected to assessment by multiple parties, I mentioned earlier. After the testing, it is basically re-implemented, and then it can go to a further step where you actually kind of soft launch. And then, this is the entire ideation process, and I have more ideas to pump into this, but it will make the discussion complex, so I'd like to stop it here. Thank you.